Alright, so after a short commercial interruption, we're back. So we more or less completed this section up here. I'll leave the rest to you. Moving on to this next section, if triangle TAR is congruent to triangle DEW, then, so in this particular one, we're going to take a look, and you guessed it, we're going to draw a diagram. They didn't give us one, so we have to draw it. Now, before we do, I want to go ahead and go through which angles, or which vertices, more accurately, are related in these two. Remember, they go in the same order, so the T is related to the D. The A is related to the E. And the W and R are related. Right. Now, a little more clearly, we can see that in the diagram that I made before I started. Now, as you probably noticed, these triangles aren't perfectly congruent. I'm not a wonderful artist, but as long as we assume they are and state that they are, we can go ahead and make them the same. Now, once we label our diagrams here, I want to know what A is congruent to. Well, I look and I see that A is the middle letter, and so is E, so A and E must be congruent to each other. So angle A is congruent to angle E. Now, this is a part that I wanted to go over in a little more detail. Now, they want to know what RT is related to. Now, what we can actually do with all of these is the A, okay, basically relates to TR. We'll look at the opposites here. So the E relates to DW. Well, and in that case, we're pretty much done as far as what they're asking for. But if we want to take it a step farther, we can actually relate all of the vertices to the sides that they're related to. So if I take R, I go opposite, so it's the only side that it's not touching. And that one's going to be related to TA. And if I take W, that one's related to the side that it's not touching, the one opposite, DE. And we can do that for our last side as well. D is related to EW. Okay, and T is related to AR. So now we actually have all the information we would need, and also just going through all of these, and this is something I like to do with these just so I don't have to worry about it afterwards. I see that T is the first vertice of that triangle, D is the first of this one, so those two are going to be related or congruent. And then I see I can say the same thing, that R is the last letter in each in the triangle, and W is the last letter in the other triangle. Okay? So now we have them all marked up. We can see pretty clearly which sides and which angles are congruent to each other, and we can move forward. So here we see that RT, well, RT is the blue line right here. And I don't think the color's coming through quite as well as I would like. Okay, but RT is right here. Well, that one is related to DW. A, okay, is opposite TR, and E is opposite DW. Okay. And moving right along, we move to ART. Well, with ART, triangle ART, we're starting with A. So I see that A corresponds. Right, A corresponds with E, so I'm going to start with, so I have triangle E. Okay. Then I move on to the R. Well, in this case, R corresponds with W, so we'll put a W there. And lastly, we end with T. Well, T corresponds with D. Right, and I will leave this one here for you. This one is one of the definitions of a triangle, but I'd recommend drawing the triangle, looking at it, and seeing what characteristics it might have. And then we're going to move on to the next one. So, this one here, actually, you know what? I'll leave this triangle to you because it's very similar to this one. And I'm going to move on to the polygon. Polygons can be a little more daunting simply because they're larger. Okay? And so I went ahead and I drew out 2 polygons. Now, if you notice, each one of these has 5 vertices. Well, the number of vertices is going to be the same as the number of sides. All right, and moving along, we can go ahead and label all of our sides here. So, now we want to know corresponding sides and corresponding angles. So let's go ahead and start with A. Well, A is opposite. Okay, so if I highlight A in this color here, A is opposite CD. Well, on my other diagram, I'm going to go ahead and look and see what is opposite of R. And if you notice, I actually don't have these oriented quite right, but that's okay. We're going to start with our first letters. So A, we can see, is opposite CD. Okay? And R is opposite TU. So if I want to start with my first one here, I can see that CD, move that up a little bit, CD corresponds with TU. Okay. So CD is congruent to TU. Now moving on to the second one here, I'm just going to pick a different color. And we'll start with B. Well, I know that because of the order, B corresponds with S, so I'll start with B. B is opposite the side DE. Well, that tells me that if I look at S and I look at the opposite side of S, those two are corresponding sides. Okay. So both my green sides are corresponding, so I can say that DE, that green side, is congruent to VU. Okay, both green sides. Do one more and then I'll leave the rest to you. We're just going to go through the same process. So I'm going to go with my third letter here, C, and that's corresponding with the third letter of the other polygon, T. So I start with C and I go straight across, and I see that that angle corresponds with EA. If we do the same thing with T and I go straight across here, I can see that my 2 yellow lines are going to be corresponding lines. So I have that EA is congruent to RV. Now what's nice about this method is, if you notice, both of my polygons here are not oriented the same. Now I could have made it easy and I could have just done it the same, but a lot of times when you get these diagrams, they're not. So you can redraw them, or you can simply use color to make sure that you don't make any errors of which ones are corresponding. Okay, now as I was going through, I probably should have been highlighting the corresponding letters as well. So let me do that real quick, because what we're going to find is the next part is we want to know the corresponding angles. Oops, that should be yellow. Well, we can do the same thing here. Now, I know that this angle right here, the green angle, is going to correspond with the green angle over here. I'm going a little out of order, but since I have them color-coded, it's a piece of cake. Okay, so angle RST, okay, must be congruent to angle CBA. Again, we're just using the vertices of those are corresponding, so the angles will be corresponding. CB, angle CBA. Okay, now let's try the yellow one. Okay, and I didn't quite get the yellow one over here. Well, the yellow one, well, I see that C corresponds with T, so those vertices are going to correspond. Okay, I have DCB here. DCB must be congruent to STU. Okay? And you can continue on the same way. I'd recommend getting multiple colored highlighters because it's going to be a huge help keeping these polygons organized. Now, completing the classroom exercises, I'm going to go ahead and do the first 5, and then I'll leave the rest to you. Okay. So the first one that they have here, or that we have here, is suppose you know that FIN is congruent to WEB. Well, you probably guessed that what we're going to do for this particular problem is we are in fact going to draw them out. Now, since we don't have any information about the triangles, I'm just going to do a couple of really generic triangles here. Okay, and I'm going to try to make them look as similar to each other as possible. Okay, but keep in mind, we don't know that these are right triangles. We don't really know anything about them, in fact. Okay, we just know that they are congruent. Now, if you're going to draw your own diagrams, what I'd recommend is cautiously, well, try to make them look a little more like each other than that, but that's not a big deal. Go ahead and cautiously, take, if I know that I'm going to make the top one here F, well, I'm just going to go ahead and make the corresponding one here W. Okay? F and W are the first letters. Why not just make the pictures look the same? So then we move on to our second one. And I'll make those ones yellow. Ooh, that's not very good with pencil. Okay, F and W. Okay, and I'll probably avoid the highlighter with the pencil from now on. Let's switch to pen. All right, so now I'm going to move on to I and E. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just put I over here and E over here. Just go in order. Okay. Okay, I'm going to make those pink. Okay. And then lastly, we're going to do or correspond N and B. So I have N and B, and those are going to both be the bottom right corner there. And I'll make those ones green. Okay. Now it asks us for to do a couple things. Name 3 pairs of corresponding sides. So this is a lot of what we did already. Okay, but one of the ways again we can do that is I see that N is in fact directly opposite of FI. So I know that though that one is going to correspond with, well, B is directly opposite of EW. So I know that those two green lines are corresponding. So IF, okay, line segment IF is congruent and it's corresponding with WE. Okay. And we can do the same for our pink one here. We have I, well, that's directly opposite this one here. Okay, and E is directly opposite WB. So now I just look at my 2 pink lines. Well, the 2 pink lines, we have FN is congruent to WB. And just so we're all on the same page here, what I did, okay, those are the green ones. These are the pink ones. And the very last one is we're going to have a yellow one. So I take my yellow highlighter. I'm going to highlight the side opposite of F and opposite of W. And I know that I in the yellow line segment here must be congruent to EB. Okay, the other yellow line segment. Right? Now it asks me to name 3 pairs of corresponding angles. Well, that's pretty nice because I already have them all highlighted. So F and W are both yellow, and in fact, in this case, since W and F are the vertices only for one angle, I can actually just name that angle using that. So I'm just going to do angle F is congruent to angle W. Okay, and that's my yellow angle. Keep these all straight. Okay, and then the next one, I have that angle N is congruent to my other green angle, angle B, okay. And then the very last one, I have that IN is congruent, or I'm sorry, yellow. I have my, what do I have left? I did yellow, green, I have pink. I have that my pink angle I is congruent to my other pink angle E. Okay, and then very lastly, we're going to be asked if the triangles are good to go. What's nice about having everything labeled this way is we just have to see if things lined up. So I have in, it was a green angle, okay, and B was my other green angle. Then I have that F was my yellow angle, okay, and W was my other yellow angle. And I have that I was my pink angle, and E was my other pink angle. Now I just have to make sure the colors are in the same order, because in that way I know that both of these are traveling along exactly the same, and our corresponding angles our vertices are in fact corresponding when we name it like this. Well, I have green, pink, yellow, and here I have green, pink, yellow. And if we go and visually inspect it, we start here. Okay, then we travel to these corresponding vertices and then to these corresponding vertices. So we're going to use the same method right here. Okay, I'm going to start with pink this time. Ooh, and I was a little off the page. Again, we are verifying that the colors were in the same order. Green, pink, yellow, green, pink, yellow. All right, so we're going to do the same thing here. I is my pink color and E is also pink. Now I have F is yellow, and so is W. Oh, and I think I'm going to run into a problem with this one. But I'm going to finish up. N is green, and so is B. So if you notice, this one is not correct because we have pink, and then green and yellow are supposed to be corresponding. Well, if we look at our picture, our W is up here, and our N is down here. They're both middle initials, more or less, or the middle vertices in the triangle as far as these names go, but they are not corresponding. So this one is not correct. And I forgot to write it down, but we saw here that since the colors all ended up in the same order, this one would be correct to state that. Now, the very last one, okay, in number 5, at least to get you started, here is a picture of number 5. Now, in number 5, I'm going to get you started simply by writing down the corresponding angles here. So for this one, we can see clearly that these two angles must be congruent because they are vertical angles. So if I make this one a yellow angle and that one a yellow angle, okay, I know that those two are congruent. Now from here it gets a little bit more tricky. Now these types of diagrams, if they don't give you enough information, but they do tell you that they're congruent, to a degree you're going to have to just kind of take their word for it and look at it visually. So I can see that these two angles both look like right angles. Okay? And so I'm going to go ahead and assume that these are the two congruent angles. And then A and C also look pretty similar, so those would also be congruent angles. Okay. So they say that the two triangles are congruent. Well, now I'm just going to go ahead and let's say I want to go pink for my first one, or for my first vertice, then I'll do my yellow vertice, and then I'll do my green vertice. Now the order of this doesn't matter as long as it's the same for both. So as long as we go pink, yellow, green, well I know pink corresponds with pink, yellow corresponds with yellow, and green corresponds with green, I'm in good shape. So I have triangle pink, well that's A, angle, so that's A, yellow is O, and green is B. And that's a little tough to see. Let me use a, so I have A, O, B, and then if that must be congruent to triangle, well, if I go to my other triangle, my pink vertice is C, My yellow vertex is O again, and my green vertex is D. Okay? And again, color is going to be a great tool in these types of problems to ensure that you keep your vertices going in the right direction. Okay? From here, you can go ahead and complete numbers 15 or 5 through 20. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to write them down and ask them to us in class.